Hey, what's going on? How you doing today? I am David Long. I am just coming today to share with you some clips from my video that I recently made about addressing integral integrity with Steve McIntosh. It's kind of a long video, so I decided to break it into some parts, into some clips, and share it with you. If you enjoy this, feel free to check out the full-length version right here. Enjoy.
Warning, the following video is using integral language and distinctions. I will try to explain as I go, but to some extent it is assuming that you are integrally informed or have some knowledge of integral theory already. If you do not, you can find intro material on my I Am David Long YouTube page.
A lot of this idealism, a lot of the metaphysics and storytelling around it is real beautiful and real intriguing, and it's rooted in the traditional stories that religions have told all over the world, that humanity has believed in for thousands and thousands of years. So we're very, very steeped in this one particular type of poetry, and we understand its themes and it sings to us still. And that's good, and a lot of it can be qualified in transrational kind of terminology where we can say this is a good metaphor.
Every mythology, every religion is true in this sense. It is true as metaphorical of the human and cosmic mystery. But when it gets stuck to the metaphor, then you're in trouble.
Check out this quote by Pierre Desjardins. He says, "We're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience."
It's not as if the infinite becomes present. It's more accurate to say that the finite, the phenomenal world of appearances, becomes transparent to the infinite that's underneath, that's sort of upholding the universe from within.
And I actually do take issue with that. A lot of these ideas are rooted in traditional views that tend to over-glorify the absolute and the transcendent. Like Buddhism can be very escapist. It doesn't want to be caught up in Maya or the world of illusion.
That's the big joke. The Zen master laughs. Wake up. It never happened. It's all a big dream. Wake up, everybody. It's all a joke. Consciousness is the only reality. And the whole world of time and becoming is an illusion. Vibration. Just being. No urgency whatsoever. Everything is cool. There's no urgency. The SS is coming. It's not real. Global warming's happening. I'm free because I'm free from the process. I'm beyond it. I'm free from it. I was never part of it. I'm free. I'm already free. Say, I know that, but I need you to be here with me. Now be here. Come, be here. No, I'm free from it. I've always been here. Where else could I be? No, I need you to be here with me. I'm always with you. See, now you see where I get in so much trouble.
On the absolute side, the analogy is if you're in a dream at night and there are thousands of people starving, there are two ways you can stop their hunger. One is in the dream you can try to feed them all. Or the second is you can wake up, and that will end their suffering immediately.
There's all these ways of talking about reality like it's not real, or that it's like fallen or lesser than. And speaking of fallen and lesser than, you have these ideas definitely bound up in the Christian tradition, where reality or nature is fallen and evil and separate and needs to be corrected, or in this case, perfected.
You cannot be saved by earthly wisdom.
It's in the biblical tradition, all the way in Christianity and Islam as well. This business of not being with nature, and we speak with sort of derogation of the nature religions. You get a totally different civilization, a totally different way of living, according to your myth as to whether nature is fallen or whether nature is itself a manifestation of divinity. There was the cobra, the giver of life, as a divine, positive, not negative figure.
The Christian story has turned it around because the serpent was the seducer.
Well, But what that amounts to is a refusal to affirm life.
The principal actors are pointing to someone else as the initiator of the fall.
Yeah, but it turns out to be Snake. And Snake in both of these stories is the symbol of life throwing off the past and continuing to live.
Why?
Because the snake sheds its skin, just as the moon sheds its shadow. The snake in most cultures is positive, because the serpent represents the power of life in the field of time to throw off death. And the Buddha represents the power of life in the field of eternity to be eternally alive.
Women have paid a great price because in mythology, they are the ones who led to the downfall.
Of course they did. I mean, they represent life. Man doesn't enter life except by woman. And so it is woman who brings us into the world of polarities and pair of opposites and suffering and all. But I think it's a really childish attitude to say no to life with all its pain, you know? To say this is something that should not have been. There's a wonderful formula that the Buddhists have for the Bodhisattva, who realizes his identity with eternity and at the same time his participation in time. And the attitude is not to withdraw from the world when you realize how horrible it is, but to realize that this horror is simply the foreground of a wonder. And come back and participate in it. All life is sorrowful, is the first Buddhist saying, and it is. It wouldn't be life if there were not temporality involved, which is sorrow, loss, loss, loss. You gotta say yes to it and say it's great this way. I mean, this is the way God intended it.
You don't really believe that?
But this is the way it is. And I don't believe anybody intended it, but this is the way it is. All of this, as it is as it has to be, and it is a manifestation of the eternal presence in the world. The end of things always is painful. Pain is part of there being a world at all.
Couldn't one draw the philosophy of nihilism?
Well, that's not the necessary thing to withdraw. You could say, I will participate in this row, and I will join the army, and I will go to war. I will participate in the game. It's a wonderful, wonderful opera, except that it hurts. There's a passage in Paul's epistle to the Philippians, be as Christ, for Christ did not think godhood something to be hung on to be clung to, but let go and came down and took life in the form of a servant even unto death. Let's say, come in and accept the suffering and affirm it. The coming of Christ to be crucified and illustrating thus the suffering of life removes man's mind from commitment to the things of this world in compassion. It's in compassion with Christ that we turn to Christ. And so the injured one becomes the Savior. It is the suffering that evokes the humanity of the human heart. And by contemplating the cross, you are contemplating the true mystery of life. And that love for this experience, no matter how horrific the experience, the love for it.
So there's joy and pain in love.
Yeah, there is. Love, you might say, is the burning point of life. And since all life is sorrowful, so is love. And the stronger the love, the more that pain, but love bears all things. Love itself is a pain, you might say, that is the pain of being truly alive. It's whether you're going to say no to the serpent or yes to the serpent, as easy as that.
No to the adventure?
Yeah, the adventure of being alive, of living.
I really like this idea. Without struggle, there's no growth. Without risk, there's no adventure. Part of what it is to be alive is to have to struggle. But it's also having projects that makes life worth living. If everything was perfect, there'd be nothing to do. It's like if you ever try to play a video game on God mode. It's not as fun and it's not as much of an accomplishment to win. I think that's part of what makes life great, is that there's projects, that there's something to do, something to achieve, that we can work together to make things better. And not better for some otherworldly thing, but better for the relevant people and animals and ecosystems who are involved. So in an absolute sense, you might say that life and the universe and reality is already perfect. That's part of what I think is good about having an evolutionary emergent view, is that you can see refinement and evolution is doing something. Things are getting better in a relative sense. I'm not saying it's absolutely going somewhere or has some kind of ultimate telos or ultimate end in perfection, but things are getting better in some sense. There has been a lot of work put in by tons of people who've cared throughout thousands of years of history, at least human history, to try to make the world a better place for everyone, and that really means something. And we need to do that in our time as well. So to me, that's what evolutionary spirituality is about.
This is it. This moment now is the heavenly moment. And
I like the idea that Eden was not, Eden will be.
Eden is. The kingdom of the Father spread upon the earth, and men do not see it. I mean, Eden is.
So this is an example of that non-dual perspective, being able to see both the absolute big picture truths and also the relative truths.
You're in the field of time when you're man. And one of the problems of life is to live in the realization of both terms.
So I would say in an absolute sense, you have perfection, a beautiful process that it is great to be a part of. And in a relative sense, you have problems, the drama of life. It's great to have the beautiful movie. It's hard to be in it and see the heroes and the characters suffer. But would you want to not have the movie because there's the suffering? The movie's perfect with the suffering. You need to have it in there for there to be drama, for there to be tension, for there to be something going on in the movie. I think evolution is a perfect system. I think it's perfect to have this kind of situation where you have to strive and struggle to grow, to be something. You have to work for it. It means something to achieve something, because it's fucking hard to become. To become anything, it takes work. And so when you become something, it means something. That's like why heaven is so meaningless to people. It's like this idea of, perfection and this like one-note song for eternity. It's fucking boring. It's impermanence that makes things special. It's the fact that you only get this one time, that this event is only gonna happen once. There's no trial run. This is your only chance at life. Don't blow it. This is the kind of thing that's weighing heavy on you. Am I gonna take it up? Am I gonna do something with it? Am I gonna move the ball forward? Am I gonna live selfishly for myself? Or am I gonna do something special for the bigger picture that I care about? And I know that who and what I really am beyond local customs and traditions and ways of talking about things is this bigger emergent process that's moving through me. In a relative sense, you can see that there's all these problems, but in an absolute sense, you can see that from a big picture perspective, it's all a part of a bigger process. It's like if you're going through a breakup or something, it feels like the end of the world. That's an opportunity for you to grow, for you to introspect and learn about yourself. And yeah, it sucks, it seems negative in the moment, and there's all these details, blah, blah, blah. But in the big picture sense, you might look back on your life and say, that was a positive point in my life because it helped me to reorient and change and do things differently. So we need a spirituality that helps us to see the perfection in the breakup and not hold some kind of mythical ideas about finding perfection in getting back together with our soulmate and some other kind of thing like that. We need a spirituality that appreciates the perfection in the struggle, not a spirituality that is looking for some otherworldly perfection. So that's what I mean about, in a big picture sense, I think it's perfect already. We don't need transcendence to be perfect. All we need to do is appreciate the fact that life is perfect, even though it hurts, even though it's painful. And we should say yes to life with all of its pain. And that's what I mean about having a spiritual view that's life-affirming, that's saying yes to the struggle, not trying to get out of it, or say that we're going to be perfect when we transcend it. No, it's perfect as it is. It just hurts and it's hard. But to live is to be a part of this process, is to be caught up in this beautiful opera. So I don't think we should be looking for some otherworldly, transcendent answer. What we need is a religion that helps us appreciate what we have. One of the things I'm interested in terms of this idea of the omega point and God as the benevolent creator is the problem of suffering or evil. This is a common talking point or meme in a lot of the atheist-theist type of debates. And it basically goes something like this. There's suffering in the world. People do evil things and hurt other people. But you have God, who is supposedly an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful being. And God answers prayers, supposedly. So why do bad things happen to good people? How can there be all this messed up stuff going on when God is all-loving and all-powerful? So I'm interested in the question, when you say things like,
and at the heart or the depth of this realm is the spiritual experience of the love of the Creator for each creature. You know, that the love of God is the thrilling experience of being known and cared for as an individual by the source of the universe, is a thrilling confirmation of the faith of those who have a personal relationship with God, this creative being, which has, will and love.
This creator God sees me, Jeff, and loves me, Jeff.
That's what the experience of the love of God confirms.
That the beautiful, the true, and the good are each little flashing messages of love.
What is that like then if you don't feel the love of God? What if that's your personal experience? What if you're someone who's down and out, someone who's homeless, someone who's in horrible pain and suffering, and you don't feel God's love in any kind of real way in your life? And I guess in that case, God's message is coming in loud and clear. Isn't this kind of an insulting idea to them, that God loves you?
God's intervention is what's behind our idea that prayer works. But if God intervenes, why doesn't he? In our world, every 5 seconds, a child dies of starvation. Every 5 seconds. In our world, every minute, 25 people die from diseases from unclean water. Every hour, 300 people die of malaria. If God intervenes, why doesn't he intervene? The Holocaust, genocides, terrorist attacks, starvation, poverty, tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes.
Messages of love.
9 million children die every year before they reach the age of 5.
And that's, in a sense, our job, is to rediscover perfection experientially.
Okay, picture an Asian tsunami of the sort we saw in 2004 that killed 250,000 people. One of those every 10 days, killing children only under 5. Okay, it's 24,000 children a day, 1,000 an hour, 17 or so a minute. That means before I can get to the end of this sentence, some few children, very likely, will have died in terror and agony. Okay, think of the parents of these children. Think of the fact that most of these men and women believe in God and are praying at this moment for their children to be spared. And their prayers will not be answered.
The love of the Creator for each creature. You know, that the love of God is the thrilling experience of being known and cared for as an individual by the source of the universe, is a thrilling confirmation of the faith of those who have a personal relationship with God.
Okay, but this is all part of God's plan. Any God who would allow children by the millions to suffer and die in this way, and their parents to grieve in this way, either can do nothing to help them, or doesn't care to. He is therefore either impotent or evil.
Messages of love.
This vision of life has absolutely nothing to do with moral accountability. Okay, and please notice the double standard that people use to exonerate God from all this evil. Okay, we're told that God is loving and kind and just and intrinsically good. But when someone like myself points out the rather obvious and compelling evidence that God is cruel and unjust, because he visits suffering on innocent people of a scope and scale that would embarrass the most ambitious psychopath, Okay? We're told that God is mysterious. Okay? Who can understand God's will? Okay? And yet this is precisely, this merely human understanding of God's will is precisely what believers use to establish his goodness in the first place. You know, something good happens to a Christian. He feels some bliss while praying, say, or he sees some positive change in his life, and we're told that God is good. Okay? But when children by the tens of thousands are torn from their parents' arms and drowned, we're told that God is mysterious. Okay? This is how you play tennis without the net. Okay? And I want to suggest to you that it is not only tiresome when otherwise intelligent people speak this way, it is morally reprehensible. Okay? This kind of faith is really the perfection of narcissism. God loves me, don't you know? He cured me of my eczema. He makes me feel so good while singing in church. And just when we had given up hope, he found a banker who was willing to reduce my mother's mortgage. Okay? Given all that this God of yours does not accomplish in the lives of others, given the misery that's being imposed on some helpless child at this instant, this kind of faith is obscene. Okay? To think in this way is to fail to reason honestly or to care sufficiently about the suffering of other human beings.
I'm just curious about that in general because I know Steve said that his God is a personal, loving God, maybe all-knowing, but all-powerful? Do we know? Does this fit into his whole free will kind of scheme? That's a common justification, though it's not one found in the Bible. I'd be interested to hear how he deals with that. If his God is all-powerful or if it intercedes in the world. It's an interesting question.
Infinity or perfection is partially withdrawn to create a space of freedom where we can participate in discovering what's relatively more perfect by our own volition. And that's, in a sense, our job, is to rediscover perfection experientially.
If we're really being honest, we can't postulate all of these idealistic assumptions and act like we know that that is true. We have to work from what we actually know, which I kind of feel like at a certain point that he's going to say this. He says something about, how we know that the Big Bang is true. And that's where I thought maybe he was going to get into talking about what I said about trying to work with what we got while we have it to make things more good for sentient beings who are suffering in the world, to measure good in a kind of way that's relative to the beings in question. Good for sentient beings, good for ecosystems, good for environments, good to relative ends. Good is a relative distinction. I don't know what perfection is in an absolute sense.
As I mentioned, they're also intrinsic in the sense that they're ends in themselves. They don't need to be good for anything else, although they certainly are.
And it also seems to be very human-centric.
If we want to know what evolution's purposes are, all we have to do is look within our direct experience. Our purposes are its purposes.
As if flesh monkeys are part of God's ultimate plan of realizing himself. I mean, talk about the height of arrogance. Now, this part really does remind me of arguing with the creationist. I feel like we almost need to bring out some bad design arguments or something.
I want to do just a fast tirade on stupid design. Look at all the things that just want to kill us. Most planet orbits are unstable. Star formation is completely inefficient. Most places in the universe will kill life instantly. There are people that say, oh, the forces of nature are just right for life. Excuse me. Just look at the volume of the universe where you can't live. You will die instantly. That's not what I call the Garden of Eden. Galaxy orbits that we orbit once every couple 100 million years, you're bound to come close to a supernova that will wipe out your ozone layer and kill everybody on the surface who doesn't otherwise have dark skin, because your high energy rays will give you skin cancer. We're on a collision course with the Andromeda Galaxy. Gone is this beautiful spiral that we have. And of course, we're on a one-way expanding universe as we wind down to oblivion, as the temperature of the universe asymptotically approaches absolute zero. That's the universe. Then Earth. Volcanoes, tsunami just killed up 200,000 people, floods, tornadoes. None of this is any sign that there's a benevolent anything out there. And 99% of all life that has ever lived is now extinct. Inner solar system is a shooting gallery, comets, asteroids, duck. And look how long it took to make multicellular life from the beginning of the Earth. Life happened quickly, but not multicellular life. You needed your cyanobacteria to sort of crank on the oxygen. That's sort of rocket fuel for multicellular creatures. But that took 3.5 billion years. That's hardly an efficient plan with us in mind. And in human beings, this is like the most tragic of them. I don't even include here where people want to kill each other. I'm talking about nature killing us without the help of human beings. Aggressive childhood leukemia, hemophilia, all of this. And we so much praise about the human eye, but anyone who's seen the full breadth of the electromagnetic spectrum will recognize how blind we are. We can't detect magnetic fields, ionizing radiation, radon. We are like sitting ducks for ionizing radiation. We have to eat constantly because we're warm-blooded. Crocodile eat a chicken a month, it's fine. These gases at the bottom, you can't smell them, taste them, you breathe them in, you're dead. And with the birth defects, most are unknown. Others, it's like abuse and infection and stuff that human beings have something to do with. We have no idea. Birth defects are tragic. And you just look at images of these aborted fetuses, and most of these are stillborn, others are born with a heart outside the body. This is all simply stupid design. And the problem is, if you look for what is intelligent, and yeah, you can find some things that are just really beautiful, and really, hey, that's a clever. You know, the ball socket of the shoulder, and a lot of things you can point to, but then you stop looking at all the things that confound that revelation. So if I came upon a frozen waterfall, and it just struck me for all its beauty, I would then turn over the rock and try to find a millipede, or some kind of deadly newt, and then put that in context, and realize, of course, the universe is not here for us, for any singular purpose. Of course, you eat, breathe, eat, and drink through the same hole in your body, guaranteeing that some percent of us will choke to death every year. Imagine if you had a separate hole for breathing and eating and talking. It's not a hard request. Dolphins breathe and eat through different holes in their body. And this one, of course, my favorite of all, what's this going on between our legs? As you've heard, we have an entertainment complex in the middle of a sewage system. No engineer would design that at all.
What's the meaning of the universe? What's the meaning of a flea? It's just there. That's it. And your own meaning is that you're there. Now we are so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget that the inner value, the rapture that is associated with being alive is what it's all about. I don't believe life has a real purpose. I mean, when you really see what life is, it's a lot of protoplasm with an urge to reproduce and continue in being. Grass, you know. Every 2 weeks, a chap comes out with a lawnmower and cuts it down. Suppose the grass were to say, well, for Pete's sake, what's the use? It's the coming into being, that's it, and that's the life point in you. Just sheer life can't be said to have a purpose because look at all the different purposes it has all over the lot. But each incarnation, you might say, has a potentiality, and the function of life is to live that potentiality. Thinking about space may help you to realize something. The vision of a universe of unimaginable magnitude and inconceivable violence. Billions upon billions, literally, of roaring thermonuclear furnaces scattering from each other, each thermonuclear furnace being a star, and our sun among them. Many of them actually blowing themselves to pieces, littering the outermost reaches of space with dust and gas, out of which new stars with circling planets are being born right now. That's where we are, kiddo. And to realize that, you realize how really important you are. One little micro bit in this great magnitude. And then out of that must come the experience that you and that are in some sense one, and you partake of all of that.
Humans are freaking cool. We can create and manipulate symbols, and we've set ourselves up in these fancy little boxes, and we're living pretty well. But we're still just a species on this planet. We are not the end of evolution. We are having our time right now, but that time could pass. If we really understand what humans are in context, if we see that we are the earth, we are the universe becoming conscious in this vast mystery where it's not guaranteed. We might not survive. Humans might ruin it. We might not make it. And it's important to know that we might not make it, because if we think we're just going to make it, we're going to take it for granted. And we might not make it. We have to really step it up and do the things that we think are of value, to be the hands and feet of evolution in this world, to make shit happen. And if we don't make shit happen, we're going to die. You know, but then later in the talking to somebody else, he basically says this same thing.
Regress is always possible, right? And so if climate change tanks the environment and the economy with it, then civilization is clearly going to regress. And because these stages transcend and include each other, integral requires the accomplishments of the previous stages being in place. So the emergence of the next great phase of human history is certainly contingent and not guaranteed. And so I'm not trying to describe it as inevitable. Cultural evolution doesn't occur inexorably like biological evolution. It occurs when people actually try to make the world a better place, right? It's not natural selection, it's actual selection. I definitely argue and believe that the universe is going somewhere, and where it's going is increasingly toward the infinite. In other words, that there will be a completion of evolution. So I'm not trying to describe it as inevitable. There will be a completion of evolution, not inevitable. There will be not inevitable. There will be a completion of evolution, not inevitable.
It seems like he's saying that we as a species can fail to make it. We might not escape the heat death of the sun. Where are we going to go? What's our ultimate end that we're working towards? To me, it makes sense to say that the ultimate end that we're working towards is a better, always better, 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 better tomorrow, always. We need some kind of an actual rational system to refine with emergent new information and technology. Thanks for watching. You can check out the full-length video right here, and here's the next part if you're interested as well.